All right, I think that's working now, and we're all set. So we're going to continue. This will be the end. So we did dynamic web mapping last week, and today's lecture will be the end of dynamic web mapping, and we're going to continue talking about styled layered descriptors, and we're going to show you how to modify those a little bit. And I did not post the assignment that I said I was going to post. So I was really trying to get the computer to be able to connect from offsite for the coast people. I tried downloading a FTP server so that we could connect through that. I was going to change the directions. I wasn't able to complete that. Yesterday I was out doing field work and with Frank down in geology. And so anyway, I haven't quite been able to figure that out. So I wasn't able to change the directions. And but it's almost done. So I'll post that. And the assignment still remains the same. The assignment is going to be for you to post your own data up on the Geo server and symbolize it the way that you would want to symbolize it. And so the lab just basically walks you through what we did in class, and you can see most of that from the video. The only issue is on the coast connecting to that server, and that's the problem I'm trying to resolve. You should be able, though, to get a jump start on that by doing it, by just watching the video. And again, until I get that fixed, if anybody on the coast wants to be progressing toward putting their own data up there, you can still send me a zip file of the data that you want to use and have me load it on there. Once it's there, you can use the web interface to interact with it. It's just getting your data up. Okay, so that will be the assignment, and I'll post that, and I'll give you until next Thursday to do that. Remember that on this Thursday, tell all your friends that are in the class that aren't here. It looks like everybody's here. But this Thursday, there's no class. No class this Thursday. I'm going to be gone. I'll be traveling. I'll be in the Caribbean. So just want to make sure we've had technical difficulties. But y'all on the coast, can you hear me? Okay, good. Okay. Great. So you heard no class on Thursday. We'll meet back again on a week from today, our regularly scheduled program. So let's look. I've uploaded a few materials. I know I didn't upload the lab yet, but I looked at a few materials on the web site, which is the Blackboard, USM. I thought I put my computer into restore mode, but it didn't restore. So I had this pulled up earlier. But so we've got our web mapping course, and I'm going to rename this week Unit 4, because this is really still Unit 4. So we'll call this the dynamic map stuff. And so if you click on that, that's where we still are. So I didn't create a new one because we're still on the same topic. So I have the video from Tuesday. I posted the Thursday lecture. I'll post this third lecture up there too, because this really is still in the creating a dynamic service portion of the course. So I've posted a few things up here. I've posted a thing called Info for Lab, and that's something that we're going to go over today. And then I've posted this cookbook for SLD. Okay. All right. So I'm going to hit that link real quick. I know we didn't quite get to it, but at the very end of last class, I mentioned or talked about these styled layer descriptors, and I said that's what I wanted to. One of the reasons why I hadn't posted the lab is because I wanted to include that, and I've gotten pretty close to completing that portion of the lab. And so a styled layer descriptor, SLD, is what that stands for, is an XML file. And this is an open standard. What's that mean? It means that this is a standard that a bunch of people agreed to, not necessarily a company said this is the way it's going to be. Sometimes the line is a little blurry, you know, like we've mentioned before. KML started off as a proprietary standard. This is an open standard. It started out as an open standard, a styled layer descriptor, and it basically is a text file that describes how your data will be symbolized. Now, even when you use ArcMap, okay, everybody here should have used ArcMap in you know, in another class. When you save a file in ArcMap, when you save an MXD file, and you went and you opened up our catalog and you went and you deleted some of the data, or even moved some of the data that was being shown in your map document, what would happen if you opened ArcMap back up? Okay, if I had a shapefile, I added that. Let's say I did this in this order. I open up ArcGIS, ArcMap. I add a shapefile layer. I symbolize the shapefile layer. Save that map document. I close that map document. Then I delete the shapefile. Then I open the map document back up. What happens? It's loss of connection. It's like I think I heard somebody say a red exclamation point. That's exactly what happens. Okay, your map document actually remains exactly the same. It still contains the information that was necessary to symbolize that data. This is a very common thing that GIS systems do, is store the data separate from the symbology or the way that it looks on the screen. In fact, most desktop GIS systems allow you to say, okay, well, I'm currently displaying this layer with this symbology, but if I want to go in, maybe I want to change this other layer to have the exact same symbology as the other layer. Okay, that's fairly common. So styled layer descriptor is really just a text-based tool for the same purpose. Okay, when I say it's text-based, that means you can open it up and read it. Okay, if you opened up an MXD file, it's all binary. It wouldn't open in a text. Well, it would open in a text editor, but it would just be a bunch of gobbledygook, because it would be stuff that was there. I think I put this in temp. Did I put the map document there? I guess I did not. So here's ArcMap. Now, one difference between a map document and a styled layer descriptor is that a styled layer descriptor is only for a single layer. It's not for an entire map. Here's my map. Where did I save it? dtemp publish data MXD. Okay, so dtemp publish data. It's in there somewhere. Map 1. So you don't have to do this. In fact, if you did it, it might accidentally start opening it up. I'm going to open this up in Notepad. This is what I mean by gobbledygook. Okay, it's not readable. Every once in a while, you'll see some readable words. Okay, there's some text data stored amongst all of the binary data, but there's a lot of binary data stored in there. It looks like there's a whole lot of text data there, but it's not a format that's meant to be read. A styled layer descriptor is a format that's meant to be read in a text editor. Okay. Now, what I just got through saying is that an MXD is for a whole entire map document. Styled layer descriptor is for a single map. But inside of ArcGIS, there is a way to save as a layer file, to save just the symbology. That's what that means. Save a layer file saves just the symbology associated with the layer. So let's say you had a huge data set and somebody else had a huge data set, and you really liked the way that they'd symbolized their huge data set. You could ask them to save a layer file, and then send you that layer file through an email. And the layer file would be really small because it's just how that huge data set is symbolized. Then you could load that layer file into your map. It would have that little red exclamation point at first, but then you could fix the link and say, well, here's the data set I want it to point at, right? So that's what a styled layer descriptor is. A styled layer descriptor is the same thing as a layer file, except for it's in a text format that's an open standard. Everybody can utilize it. So we've got our styled layer descriptors. And today, one of the things that we're going to do is take one of these styled layer descriptors and use use it to symbolize our data that we have up there. Okay. This is called this is actually at the geoserver.org documentation site. And if I take out the last part of this, I'll just get to, I thought it was just the last part that we needed to remove. Maybe under styling. Nope. I don't know why. So I don't know why that link didn't work, but lots of websites, particularly websites that rely on open standards with their documentation, we'll have a lot of examples of how to use a particular configuration. Okay. And GeoServer is no different here. If they have a lot of examples on how to do something, usually they call that a cookbook. In other words, it contains lots of recipes for how to use a particular standard. People learn in different ways. Some people can just read over a standard and use that as a reference, and they do have that. Here's the specification for the styled layer descriptors, and so you could go through here and read, how you would have to have each layer symbolized and what the syntax would be. That's more. That might be very hard for somebody at first. Sometimes it's better at first to utilize examples that already exist and modify them slightly. So that's the route we're going to take today. So here you can see here's some recipes for symbolizing points. Here's some recipes for symbolizing lines, and here's some recipes for symbolizing labels. And the thing that we're going to do is symbolize our polygons with, so if you hit polygons with default label, or that's the link that I provided. So you can just hit that from this web page. It's this link right here, Cookbook for SLD. That link will take you right here. Okay. And so this is showing you what the recipe produces. It's kind of like a cookbook. You see, like maybe they have a picture of the cookies that are all completed, and you think, wow, those cookies look good. It'd be nice to know how to make those cookies with what I've got. Well, here is the code or the recipe associated with making that cookbook. Okay, with that data. Okay. And if you look over this a little bit, you can probably tell what it's doing. Okay, so here it's got a fill for the polygon symbolizer. Oh yeah, let's start out at the very top. So first we've got a rule, and the rule is the rule can be used to specify different subcategories within your data. So right now we only have a single rule, but you could have rules that would say, okay, well, if a certain field, let's say if country is equal to this, then apply this rule. If country is equal to that, apply a different rule. So you could color your polygons that were in two different colors, two different countries. Two different countries, two different colors. Okay. This is a simple one that only has a single rule, which means go ahead and apply this to every polygon in my data set. So we're going to start off simple. So we've got our simple rule that's going to apply to everything. And this is going to be a polygon symbolizer. In other words, this rule, this symbolizer applies to polygons and not to other types of data sets, points or lines. Okay. And here, the two things that it requests are fills and strokes. And so we've got a description for our fill, and this is the color right here, the color that's associated with our fill. I believe I pointed that out on Friday when we last met. This here is the stroke, okay? The stroke color, and this is the stroke width. In other words, the line that's around the outside. Okay. All right, and then this ends your polygon symbolizer. Now, in our example, we already had a rule that looked like that. In fact, I'll pull up GeoServer right now, and you can see. So I've got GeoServer. This is the same URL that it's been at. If we go to styles and we look at, I think we used green as the one there. Green already has a polygon symbolizer associated with it. It's only got a fill with no stroke. So maybe that wasn't the one we chose. I think this is the one I made on Friday. Oops. Now I'm messing it up. I'm gonna hit cancel because I'm copying over an existing one. So where's George again? So yeah. So this one has a polygon symbolizer, but it doesn't have anything else. Well, what I'd like to do today is add a text symbolizer, and we're going to see that this text symbolizer relies on a property called property name. Property name is the name of the property. What do you think that this word here, name, might mean? Okay, so we're trying to label our polygons. See how they're getting labeled? Those sound like, I don't know where those counties actually exist. Dracula County, Monte Cristo County. But anyway, where do you think that this is a shape, this is drawing from a shapefile. Where do you think these names actually come from? The labels that are listed there. Where do you think those come from? What's that? Yeah, so what do you mean by that? I mean, you're just using this word right here, right? Okay, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is if I've got a shapefile, in fact, let's pull up the shapefile that we've been using. No. Let's see, where did I put that data? So something. Okay, there we go. I don't have had that data up here. Downloads, neighborhoods. I thought I put this somewhere, but I guess I didn't. On my local machine, I mean. I'm saving the data here locally, and I'm going to open it up in ArcMap. So if I go to temp, what folder? See temp neighborhoods. Okay, there it is. All right. Now, maybe I'll open the attribute table here. Let's look at the attributes. I've got an attribute called county, city, and an attribute called name. Okay, these are neighborhoods. I want to symbolize, in GeoServer, I want to symbolize using this field called name. Okay, that would be the equivalent in the cookbook here. I want to symbolize on that field. Now, it just so happens that the cookbook example is the same. So this is where you put the name of the field that you want to symbolize on. The problem is what's the difference between the name of this field and the name of the field that we want? Let's look at ours again. What's the name? What's the difference? Anybody see a difference? Yeah, it's capitalized. I can, in ArcMap, by the way, this is what I want to do. I want to say label features. This is what I want to do the equivalent of. Label features. See how it put all those labels on there? If I go into here to properties and I look at the labels, I can see that the label field is name. So all I'm doing is the same process, but in a language that GeoServer understands, which is the styled layer descriptor. Okay. All right. I'm gonna X this out. Say I won't close that quite yet. All right. So we're gonna copy our recipe here. Copy. And it actually won't work to just copy the recipe, but we are going to copy it and we're going to make some changes. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go back over to the GeoServer style editor. And now, if we go to styles, let's make a new style. And you can follow along with me now, or you could look at the video after. Okay, either way. Okay, I'm going to make a new style, and I'm going to call the name of my style, with labels. And I'm going to put it in my workspace, the George workspace. So I've got it in George workspace, and I'm going to make it a style layer descriptor. I'm going to start by copying from an existing style. And since this is a polygon one, I'll choose an existing polygon style. I think I'm just going to copy this one that says green. And it should pop in here in a second. If it doesn't, we're going to have to copy it and paste it from the existing definition. Okay, it doesn't look like it's working. So let's, what I'm going to do, and what you can do too, is open up a whole new window with GeoServer interface in it. Go back to styles, and then just select green manually. Then you can copy everything out. This is all we're doing. You can copy everything out of that one. You can say copy. Oh, doesn't work to right click. So Control C copies. Control C is what I'm hitting on my keyboard after I select everything. Then go back over and say Control V. The reason that I copied this is because GeoServer is kind of picky about having all this stuff up at the top. Okay, I didn't really need it, but GeoServer, the cookbook didn't really need to put that because it's always the same, but GeoServer does care about it. Okay. So, although I think that if you click this, yeah, it gives you the whole thing. Sorry, that's what I should have done. Okay, that'll work too. So you can also click on this, copy the whole thing over. In fact, I think that's what I'll do. Copy, Control A, oops. And I'll just put that back to choose one. I don't really like how it, I don't really like how it didn't format it for me. Reformat? Yeah, there we go, okay. All right, so I reformatted it. So I just copied and pasted it right from the, when I clicked on this link, it got it. So I Control C, go back over, Control A, paste it all, and then hit the reformat, and everything looks great. Okay. Now, if we hit validate right now, that's what you should do whenever you type up new style layer descriptors. Hit validate. You're going to get a message that says no validation errors. That's great. Your code is correct. Let's say I forgot like a quote in here. Now when I hit validate, it should tell me, oh, there's an open quote is expected for name attribute. It says to get something like this, it isn't as helpful as it probably should be, but it does at least tell me that there's a problem with the quotation marks around one of my names. And the colors kind of help you out. You can see, well, why did the colors change all of a sudden halfway through here? Anyway, it was because of that quote. Oops, put it in the wrong place. Because of that quote right there. I hit validate, and now I have no validation errors. All right, now, you might think it should work now. It should be great. I'll say okay, and it'll work because lowercase name has got to be the same as uppercase name. Well, it's not. It's not going to work. So you have to change this, and it has to be the exact same name as in the other file. Now, another thing to watch out for is that there is such thing as an alias for a field name. So it may be, if you look at the properties, it may be that the fields all have an alias, and it may be that those are different. Lots of times they're exactly the same. In fact, for all of these, they are the same. See, state, shape, fid, whatever. All of those are the same. However, it can be that the alias is different, and what shows up in the attribute table is always the alias. So sometimes if it's not working for you, it may be that there's an alias assigned to your field name, and you have to use the real field name, not the alias. So this requires the real field name right at that location. Okay. So now at this point, I have my with labels, and I'm actually gonna call it polygon. Polygon with labels, and I can leave the name and the title there to be whatever I want. Okay, I just leave the defaults, but I could change those. So now at this point, I'm going to hit submit, and I'm going to have a new one now called Polygon with Labels. George, Raber Polygons labeled, by the way, is just one that I made earlier, and it works. But that's what I was doing when I was preparing the lab. I didn't even spell polygon right, not like it matters, because it's just the name of the style. All right, so now the trick is to apply this polygon with labels to our layers. So let's look real quick. If I go into layer preview and I look at George's neighborhoods, which is right here, right now I get the blue. This is the way we left it on Thursday. I get the blue polygons. When I apply this new rule, I'm going to get green polygons with all of the places labeled. So let's do that real quick. Go back under layers and go to your name. Where's George? Oh, sorry, that's Raber neighborhoods. George neighborhoods. Maybe it's on. Maybe I got bumped to page 2. Anybody see it? I'm not seeing it. Why am I not? What's that? Third from the top. Thank you. All right. So here I go. And under publishing is where I change the layer descriptor. And then I change this to George polygon with labels. And I hit save. By the way, you can also make it so that your user, the person that's using this on the WMS side, can make a special request for a different layer descriptor. So what that will do is you can have a single layer that's being served as a WMS layer, but have lots of different ways to see it, rather than having them be separate WMS services. I mean, in the end, it's not really, it's just how you want to manage it. So you can have a single WMS service that can be displayed many ways, or you could have many different WMS services, and either one's fine. It but right now I'm saying, okay, the default, if they don't specify an SLD, is going to be this one that I just created. However, if they make a special request, they can get that label. So then I'm going to save it. And now I'm going to go back to layer preview, and I'm going to view my file. And you see I get that layer. Okay. So I zoom in, I get, and this just has to do with the labeling methods that that it chooses. The reason why I don't see all of them all the time. Okay, but I can see the neighborhood labels, and they kind of work like ArcMap. When you zoom in, they change places. They try to come up with the best fit. Okay. So that's setting up an SLD. Okay. Now, many of you in your minds are probably thinking, that's a little bit of a pain to have to come up with a text file to modify a symbology like that. And you're right. I mean, it is a little bit of a pain most of the time, but one of the great utilities is that for those of you who have learned about scripting in the past, it's a lot easier to change something slightly for a ton of text files than it is for a ton of ArcMap documents, unless you have the ArcGIS product, and then you do it in their way. Okay, so there are some advantages to it being a text file, to it being open. Okay, and I wanted to show you that this was the fundamentals of how this file works. Now, in practice, what I do actually a lot more often when I'm creating a styled layer descriptor, I thought I was going to sneeze, sorry, but it went away. When you're creating a styled layer descriptor, you can do that in your GIS desktop software. Now, there's a $500, I think it's $500, extension that allow you, it's called Arc2Earth, that allow you to do it in ArcGIS. But you know, we didn't, and it's per machine, so we didn't want to spend $500 per machine in here to install Arc2Earth. And Arc2Earth does a lot of things, so it may be worth $500 to people, and obviously it is because the company's in business. But if you only wanted to do it just for SLDs, it's not really worth it. However, QGIS, which is installed on all these machines, probably installed down there on the coast. But if it's not, sometime I'll come down there, and if it's not installed down there, I'll install it on my visit there. But QGIS actually allows you to save out a styled layer descriptor, an SLD file, by default. It's part of the functionality of the program, okay, because it's an open standard. So I'm going to show you that real quick, and then implement it. Okay. Now, if you want to follow along here, you can, but obviously, you don't have to. One of the things is that we set up QGIS on these computers about 1.5 years ago, and QGIS. One of the nice things about open source software is they get updated fairly rapidly and fairly often. So I have a newer version of QGIS on this computer, but the way that it's done is almost exactly the same. And by the way, I just opened up QGIS desktop browser by accident. You actually want QGIS desktop. QGIS desktop is what you want. So is QGIS installed on the machines down there on the coast? It is. So if you want, you can open up QGIS. It's not installed. That's not installed? Okay. It is a free product, so it's easy for me to install or to have somebody else install it. I think you have to have special privileges. But if any of you have access to a computer at home, it's a very easy install. And there's nothing special about what we're doing that you couldn't do on another computer. If you type in QGIS and you go to download QGIS, and I would suggest that you do this. In fact, I would suggest that you do this no matter what. There is this for advanced users install. All this does is install a bunch of other open source software on your computer, which you may or may not want. That's what the advanced, well, it does give, basically gives you a list of 100 open source software, GIS software packages. It's a little bit much. When I install something, I want to install just that. So usually I install the packages from this that I like, rather than just using that big old one. But anyway, this is the way I installed it. Depending on your machine, whether it's a 32-bit or much more commonly a 64-bit, you can install that on your own personal machine, okay? So if you don't have it installed on the computer you're sitting at, just sit tight and know that this is the way that you could create a quick styled layer descriptor. And in practice, what I often do is create the initial styled layer descriptor this way. And then sometimes when I want to tweak it, rather than having to open up QGIS again, getting it all the way I want it, and saving it out, I can tweak it right inside of a text editor and change it, or even sometimes right on GeoServer. So like if I want to make a line a little thicker, it's nice that it's a text format. I just have to find out where that thing is for making the lines a little bit bigger, okay? So we installed QGIS there. You can install QGIS there. And I'm going to show you how to do it. So I believe on these machines up here, we're on 1.8, which all the QGIS releases are named after cities. They're obscure cities sometimes. Pisa is actually a city that I think we've all heard about, but because they got a leaning tower. And I'm pretty sure that Lisbona is just the name for Lisbon, Portugal, in Portuguese. But anyhow, that's just trivia. Let's go ahead and load our styled layer. I mean, go ahead and load our data into QGIS. Now, QGIS is kind of like ArcGIS. Well, it fills the same niche. It's an open source desktop product, and you know, it does a lot of the same things as ArcGIS, but it obviously isn't exactly the same piece of software. The tool for opening up a new vector layer is right here. It's called Add Vector Layer. So I'm going to go ahead and add the data, the neighborhoods data, because I want to add the same data that I already added and modify that symbology, and then take that style layer descriptor and make a new layer. So I put that in G temp neighborhoods, and you just click on the shapefile, and it'll go ahead and open that. Okay. There's other vector layer types, and we're actually going to talk about some of these. We're not going to go into real big depth, but we're just going to open a single file. We could actually tell it to open up all the files in a directory. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to open up a single file, or we could connect to a geodatabase. We're just going to do file. So we'll say open, and I've got my layers up here. Okay, there's a default symbology, just like in ArcGIS, that comes up, and I think it's random, so it's a different color every time. All right. So if I wanted to open the attribute table, let's say there's not really. It would be nice if there was something like population associated with this data, but there's not. But let's at least go through here and go to symbols. It's going to be different on your machine than it is mine. So I'm pretty sure that you still right-click and say properties, but I don't think that there's a styles window. Okay, but there might be. I think that it just shows up. Okay, but in any case, it doesn't really matter what you do, but I want you to do something different. So I'm going to do something different to the data. Okay, I'm going to choose that we're going to have a different color for every name. Okay, that's what I'm going to choose if that works. When I tested this, I only just changed the color and the symbols, and I made a labels. But I'm trying to make this more exciting. I don't know why it's not. Probably because there's a lot of different names. So this is roughly equivalent to in ArcGIS if you went in and said unique values. I think that's why this is taking so long. I might Okay, sorry. So I don't know why it has this little thing going, but it works if I just hit the classify button. I'm not sure why the little circle waiting sign is showing up, but it's done when I want it to do. So again, you don't have to choose the same symbology I'm choosing, but I chose name and then I hit classify, which basically tells it to actually do the job, and it looks like it did it. And so if I hit apply, I'll be able to show you that I get a different color for every neighborhood. And so I'm going to make a styled layer descriptor file that's going to have a different color for every neighborhood. I'm just trying to show you could do this. Like I could choose graduated, but that would be for symbolizing on a numerical column. Okay, do rule based. I'm not going to do any of those other ones, but the symbology editor in QGIS is not quite as extensive as it in ArcGIS, but there's still a lot of possibilities. And almost everything you can do in QGIS, you can export to styled layer descriptor. There are some exceptions, and it will tell you I can't do this as a styled layer descriptor. Okay, so I've done that. I still want to make some labels. I want to label with a name, and this time though I'm going to let's say is there a way to, maybe there's a way, again I didn't experiment with this, so hopefully this isn't something that I can't do, but I was looking for a mask. There's a buffer. Okay, draw a text buffer and hit apply. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so I made a little mask this time. See the buffer around the labels. Okay, so now it looks like I want it to look. And again, the window looks slightly different for you. I believe for you on 1.8, there's a button over here that says save as something. Here it's under style. You can say save style and go to SLD file. Okay, so now I can save my SLD file. I'm going to save it in the same directory, this neighborhoods directory, and call it colors with mask. Okay, colors with mask. It doesn't really matter what you call it. I'm going to hit save, and now I'm going to open that up, and you'll see I'm going to open that up with I've got Notepad++ installed on this machine. You may not have that. You may just have regular old Notepad. But here is, look at the SLD file that created. It has 1,288 lines in it. Okay, this is not something that you'd be able to draw up from the cookbook. Okay, it's nice that we have a tool that can create this sort of thing. So this is telling us what the colors are that we've chosen for each one. It's telling us what that property name is that it's using with the capital N, and so on. The stroke here is right there. There's a stroke color which is that's the black line. Okay, so where's the text? Name, city center east. That's only the name. Where's the label? Let me just. That may be a general rule because that's applied equally to every single one. So named layer neighborhoods, user style, polygon symbolizer. Let's see what it says down here. Match case. Property name. So that's not it. So that's just the name of. So we got one of these for everybody. This is just telling us this part of the file is just saying, okay, take this the polygon that matches the feature that's called name is Summerdale, and then symbolize it according to the symbology that's right here. Okay, and but this doesn't say anything about labels, so I'm looking for the labels just because I'm curious as to where it's telling the labels to be symbolized. Okay. And I'm curious as to see how the mask will. All right, that's just the okay. How it's going to symbolize the mask. I still don't. That says polygon symbolizer. I still don't see how it has the labels on there. So maybe they're not in there. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see if the labels got put in there. So this is the file, and if I wanted to put this up on our QGIS server, one of the nice things is I don't have to copy and paste if I have it locally. So I have it locally. It's called Colors with Mask, and I can go back to our Geo server, and I go down to Styles, and I create a new style, and I'm going to call this same. I'll just call it the same thing, Color with Label. And hopefully it has the labels, although I didn't see them in the file. And I'm going to create this in George. And this time, I'm going to upload. Oh, I have to choose a file. And I messed up because I hit upload and it gave me an error. So I have to retype that stuff I just typed. That's not a big deal, though. Temp, neighborhoods, colors with mask.sld. I open that and hit upload. And then okay, it did keep it. So now all that information is there. I didn't have to copy and paste it. Copying and paste it would have worked, but I didn't need to do that. I'm going to put this in George, and I'm not going to change anything else. I'm going to hit validate, though, just to make sure this works. Took a few more seconds to validate. Did you see that? Just because it's reading a lot more data. It didn't find any errors. I didn't think it would because it was created right inside of QGIS. And now I'll hit submit. What this will do is save this solid layer descriptor. Okay. All right. Now, can anybody tell me what the next thing that I need to do if I want to see this layer, if I want to see this style applied as the default layer for my neighborhoods? What do I have to do? What button should I press now? It's not always about buttons that you press, but layers, okay. All right, and then I want to do this for neighborhoods, so I already highlighted over it. Now where do I go? Publishing, good. And then I just choose the one that I just created, which is called Colors with Mask. And I hit, oh, it kind of tells me what it's going to be. I hit save. And now I can go to layer preview to actually see it. Open layers, KML. There it is. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure why the labels didn't get put in there, but maybe it's because there was a halo and it didn't know how to do halos, or I'll have to find that out. I didn't when I was doing the experiment, I didn't do that. However, it wouldn't be hard to throw the labels in there. In fact, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to styles, and we've got this one called polygon with labels, right? And I could take out the, this is inside of a rule. So I could take out this text symbolizer here. I could just copy it, and then I could go back to the style editor for Raber polygons. No, sorry, not the one I just created, which is called colors with mask. And inside of rule, is it inside of rule or just polygon? Let's see. Polygon symbolizer. Yep. So my guess is it's right here. And then let's validate that. Oh, invalid content was found. I don't really know if this is going to end up solving anything. I'll experiment with getting the labels up there. Perhaps it's because I applied a mask and it just didn't save it out because it can't do that. But we are able to get the layers in there. Okay, those were under there. Okay, so that works like that. Now, the only thing that I haven't demonstrated that I wanted to demonstrate is that so far we've just been dealing with a single layer, right? One layer at a time. And you could actually symbolize multiple layers. You can actually take multiple layers and put them into the same WMS, and you can do that on GeoServer. You can do that on lots of different. You can do that on lots of different other open source packages too. It's not just publishing one layer at a time. You can do other layers, and the way that that's done, and I can't really demonstrate it because I've only created one layer, the neighborhoods. Okay, but if the way that you do that is what's called a layer group. So you can go into here and you can see layer groups that have been created before. I'll click into Spearfish. You could see that under Spearfish, there are multiple layers loaded into Spearfish. Okay, so that's a single layer group, and it has multiple layers. People can request this this data, and it will show up. If I go, in fact, if I go here and these are the individual layers. Like that's just that one. But yeah, that's how you create a layer group. There it is right there. There's the Spearfish. This is the type here is a layer group. So any of your layer groups will also show up in layer preview. And these are basically WMS services that have multiple layers associated with them. So you could do the exact same thing that we did in ArcMap here, where we've got a number of different layers to serve up inside of a WMS. So where we're going with this is that eventually you're going to make your own, like this is actually a web map right here. You're going to make your own map and you're going to add your data to these. So you know, as you publish data onto the server, it doesn't have to be, but if it's some data that you want to end up using, then go ahead and do that. And again, you could use ArcMap or you can use WMS to do that. So that's our group layer. Let me you have to follow along here, but let me just see if when I did something, maybe if I go to when I go to labels, if I say save as SLD file. This is just a test to see why the labels didn't work. No, that didn't change anything. I was wondering if you had to be on there. So I'll try to find out why that doesn't export. But what you could do as a workaround actually is create one layer that doesn't symbolize the polygons at all, that only does the labels, and using the cookbook, and then use this layer as the layer underneath. In fact, that might be a good thing to do. That might be a good thing to do right now as a demo to show you a layer group, because I haven't demoed a layer group. Okay, so let's do that right now before we take a break. So I'm going to go back to GeoServer really quickly. I don't think this will take very long. And if we go back down to our styles, I'm going to modify my my polygon with labels. And what I'm going to do in my modification is to just remove the polygon symbolizer from the text. So in other words, I'm just going to have it not symbolize the polygons. It's only going to symbolize the labels. So I'm going to delete that. I have to delete where it opens and it closes in the tags. So what I mean by that is it opens without a slash and it closes with a slash. So delete this. If I hit validate, I should not get any errors. I'm going to hit submit. Now, when I go to layer preview, this will still show that one. Okay. What I need to do actually is add another layer. And I'm going to call this one, I'm going to add a new resource, add a layer from George Philly. I'm going to publish it again. I'm just going to make another copy of the same data. And this time, I still have to do the same things. So remember, what did we have to do here? We had to say what the projection was. Then the other thing that we had to do here was to get the latitude and longitude, bounding box. So I computed that from the file. And I think that was it. I'm going to hit save. Okay. I'm going to call this neighborhood labels. So I call it neighborhood labels. These are the things I changed. I called it a different thing. I changed the projection. I changed the bounding box. And I think that should work. Okay. So now I've got George, Philly neighborhoods, and I should have neighborhood labels somewhere. Maybe it's on the second page. Neighborhood labels. I'm going to go back into it, and I'm going to change the styled layer descriptor for this one to just be the labels. Hit save. So now if I look at that, if I look at it on screen, it's going to look like just the labels with nothing else. See that? So I've got just the labels. So really, I just published the same data set twice, once with the polygons, once with the labels. It's a workaround to get the labels onto the polygons. Okay, I'm still going to try to figure out why I can't put this in the same SLD file, But the reason why I did this was to A, show you a different way to do the same problem. There's two ways to skin a cat. And B, more importantly, to demonstrate what I'm going to do now, which is show you how to create a layer group, okay? Which is basically having a bunch of layers all in the same WMS service. Okay? So now I go to layer groups, and this is where I add a new layer group, and I'm going to call this, Philly neighborhoods maybe, and I'll make the title the same. I'm not going to type up an abstract, but if I wanted to, I could. The workspace is going to be George, and down here is where these are things I can change. I can change the bounding box. I can change the coordinate reference system. In fact, I should probably do that. 3, 8, 5, 7. That way the default coordinate system will be set. I'm going to hit generate bounds. So it's going to do that on its own. Oh, it's not going to do that until after I add layers. Never mind. I'm going to leave the default there. I'm going to add my two layers, which were George neighborhoods. I hit on it, didn't I? Yeah, there we go. Oh, sorry, I just wasn't patient enough. So I'm going to add George neighborhoods, and I'm going to add George neighborhoods labels. It's on the second page. There it is. And notice what these arrows are. What do you think I should do with the arrows there? Right now, which one looks like it's on top? Neighborhoods? Is that acceptable? Is that what I want? No, I want the labels on top. So I got to move the labels up to the top. So now I'll have that up above. And I'm pretty sure I can hit generate bounds now and it'll work. Yeah. Okay. So before, when I hit generate bounds, why didn't it generate any bounds? Well, this is just a group of existing layers. So what do you think happens when I hit generate bounds? Now, when I hit generate bounds, when I was publishing a shapefile, what do you think happens? It runs some computer code that goes into the shapefile and finds the highest point, the lowest point, the furthest west, and the furthest east, right? I mean, that's what it does. So here, that's a little different. Now it doesn't do that. What it does is it asks its two layers that you've added into it what their bounds are and computes the minimum bounding box around the entire thing. Okay, so that's what this has done here. Okay. All right. Now we haven't learned about tile caching yet, but we'll learn about it later. Just leave this blank. In fact, I'm going to uncheck create a cache layer. We're going to learn about that layer later, and leave all the rest of the defaults there. Hit save. So now we've got our Philly neighborhoods. Okay. And if we want to see it in layer preview, we can do that. There it is. And it's labeled. It's not labeled with the fancy masks that I talked about before, but we've got those data. Okay. So this is really two virtual layers. Now they're accessing the exact same data. Okay. So, there's two layers, and what do you think one of the advantages to this might be? Anybody think of an advantage? So it's two layers. One's called labels, and one's called neighborhood labels, and one's called the neighborhoods. Exactly. So if somebody's using my web map service, they could turn the labels off if they want to. I mean, it may or may not be useful, but although this was a workaround that I showed you, there actually is a real practical reason why somebody might do it. If this was all the same layer, they couldn't turn the labels off unless there was an additional style descriptor on the server that would allow them to say, show the alternate style descriptor that doesn't have labels in the style description. So there are again multiple ways to do those things. But yeah, so I'll demonstrate this real quick. So I'm going to turn off my neighborhoods, and I'm going to add a WMS layer, because you can do it in a QGIS as well as ArcGIS. I'm going to say new. I'll call this. Actually, I'll just call this GeoServer, and then the URL is what we need is just this part up to here. Same as with ArcGIS. So you copy that part that goes out to the AND request, because the AND request is the request that you're making to this web service. So this is the URL I want. I don't have a username and password, so I'll just say OK, and I'll connect to it. And now I can add my Philly neighborhoods layer. There it is right there. I'll add it, close, and you'll notice that I have my layers. I'm pretty sure in ArcGIS it does allow me. I don't see. I don't see where it should allow me to turn off and on the layers by default, but it's not doing that. If I zoom in, I do see those. Just really quickly, let me make sure that I'm right. You could definitely do it if you were using your own web client. I don't know why they didn't implement that here. GIS service. Yeah. So neither of them implemented it, but you can make it so that you could turn off and on individual layers with inside of these layers. All right. Well, here I'll show you that is possible. Not that. Oh, this doesn't show. Yeah. Here we go. No. Okay. Now I won't show. We're not going to show you that right now. But what you could do is add the individual layers instead of adding the group layer that we've added. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So we've done. We've covered probably 90% of the WMS capabilities that exist in GeoServer. So GeoServer is just one package that that allows you to publish WMS services, but it's the only one we're going to cover in this course. Okay, just wanted to give you an idea of how to create a web mapping service. The nice thing is that no matter what web mapping service program you're using, the concept of the styled layer descriptors, the concept of how to access a WMS, those are all the same because it's an open standard. Okay, the week previous we covered how to create a map document and publish a map document. So we've covered both open source and commercial map publishing techniques. And then if you look at here at the syllabus, under syllabus. And by the way, I need to make a change here real quick. Yeah, so remember that I thought I uploaded a different copy, but I'm not traveling when we get back. So, and I did say that what we're going to do is move the exam back. I haven't updated this. I thought I did, but I guess I didn't. The exam will not be next week. I think that covering tiled map servers will be a good thing to include before the exam. So the only reason why I had the exam on the day I had the exam was because I'd be traveling, and since I'm only traveling one day instead of two, we're going to push back the exam. So the exam's not next week. It's it'll be a week later, and we'll cover building map servers when I get back. Okay. All right, and that's the way it'll do. So building map servers will be next week. I'll update the syllabus to reflect that. I'm building tiled map services because that'll be the last type of map service that we'll do. Then we'll start making our own web apps. So that's what we mean by putting layers together with a web mapping API, right? Okay. So the lab isn't quite typed up yet. I'm going to finish typing it up, and then you can complete it. Like I said, you should be able to complete this lab anywhere you want to with an internet connection. So you don't need to do this portion of the lab here. You just need an internet connection. Oh wait, yeah, it still doesn't work off campus. So never mind. But you don't need to use one of the computers you're sitting at. If you're on campus, you should be able to complete this portion of the lab. Okay. But again, I'll give you a week and a half to complete it because I didn't post it up there. What the lab consists of, though, is walking through what we've done for the last 2 times, just as a reference, and then there's a couple paragraphs on you publishing your own data. For those of you on the coast, what I want to do is get this FTP server running so you can FTP. But if that doesn't work, send me your data. Like I'm going to publish the lab when I go back to my office, and then if you want to get started, just send me your data. As soon as you're ready, send me your data. I'll post it. I'll tell you where it is and how to access it, and then you can complete the rest of the lab. All right, you have a question?
Yeah, going along with that, I know you probably said it at the beginning of the semester. What is the lab code?
0230 is the lab code for this door. It's Skeeter's office number with the 0 in front of it. The office right across the hall.
Okay.
I don't know if that will help you, but it helps me in my head. Like when I was first trying to memorize it, I was like, okay, I can just turn around and read that number with the 0 in front of it, and I'm set. Is it like, because you're like, is it 030 or 040? Just turn around, it's that number. That's a good question. Now, technically, you could go, if you were ambitious, you could also go and create, or you could go and install not ArcGIS server, GeoServer on your own computer, and you could complete this whole lab. You'd have to swap out a few of the directions, but you could complete this whole lab on whatever computer you wanted to, and there's no problem with that. If you send me a screenshot of your data published on your machine, that's just fine. That's acceptable. I don't know why the university is dragging their feet on this connection being available off campus. But as soon as it is available off campus, you could do everything that we've done, that we've talked about up to this point. The file sharing wouldn't work, but the FTP server, when I get that up, will. You could do everything that we've talked about up to this point in ArcGIS server or on GeoServer from any connection, as long as you had the internet and a copy of ArcGIS. All right. Anybody have any other questions?
So we just send you the zip file, right?
Yes. Yeah. Or like if it's some data that you want to use that that already exists on the internet, you could send me a link. You could say, hey, George, here's the data I want to use, and here's a link to it. Download that and tell me where you put it, and then you could do it that way. All right. All right, any other questions? And for the question that you just asked, let's say you wanted to do that, remember that if you download a local copy to your machine and you symbolize that in QGIS, the styled layer descriptor will work up on the internet just as well as it works for you on your screen. So if you do send me a link, download a copy for yourself so that you can create that. Oh, but you don't have QGIS yet. But you can install it on a different machine. There's no requirement to use QGIS. Like, you don't have to make your styled layer descriptors super fancy. So you could just use something from the cookbook. Just remember to change the name field to be whatever field you want it to be on your data. All right. Any other questions? That was a great question, by the way. Any other questions? All right. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my office and publish that. If anybody has any questions from the coast, email me. If anybody here, you can stop by or email me, and I'll have that up. I'm sorry I wasn't able to do any of it over the weekend because I saved it. I thought I saved it to the internet, but I saved it to my local machine, and I was already home and had other things to do, and we flew the drone around yesterday at Bayou Pierre. We're trying to make a we're trying to make a 3D model using just drone footage. So we went. This is where I was yesterday. It's up close to the Mississippi River, just west of Hazelhurst. So we flew this around and got a bunch of imagery, and we're trying to stitch it together to make a three-dimensional model of the data. So that's that. No, we're just gonna because you can they call it a 3D a 3D from imagery. So you can take if it works successfully, I'll show you. But you could take a bunch of images taken from different positions, and it'll calculate a three-dimensional rendering of it. So this was just this is what we did at the very end, just for kind of fun. We just flew it around. But I got a bunch of pictures from different angles, a bunch of stills from different angles. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this broadcast for now, and I'll put the link up there too.